Next, we've got Teradek. We've got John Landman, Vice President of Sales. He's titled his presentation, Steal This Encoder. Watch out, you're in New York now. We will. Take it away.
It wouldn't be my first time. Anyhow, how many of you guys is their first time ever at this trade show? Okay, that really amazes me. I would have thought that everyone understood about streaming by now. But it's really refreshing to see so many new people in here year after year after year, right? Which kind of says that this is an industry that is here to stay. I can give you my numbers of a company that makes a number of different encoders, from a free encoder up to a backpack that does cellular bonding, ranges from, again, 0 to 10 grand, let's say. Statistically, we've deployed about 54,000 encoders in 5 years. That's a lot of streaming, right? So we see a lot of problems, and what I wanted to do today, rather than talk about the encoders, is really talk about the problems that we see day in, day out. When you turn up to a location and stream, I had a whole 16-page presentation done for you guys, but I've just spent the last hour trying to get streaming media live on their Facebook page after dealing with a typical problem that one has when you get to a location that you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen, right? So most of the time we all hope that we're going to get a fiber connection from the place that we're going, with 100 megabits per second up and down. But how often is that really the case? Right? If that really happens to you, go gamble that day, because you will win the lottery, right? So what I really want to do is, try and give some advice to those people from my personal experience. I used to have brown hair; it's now grey and falling out, but that's mainly because of the stress that I've had dealing with these kinds of problems that I've seen. So one of the first problems, or one of the first things that one should do if interested in streaming, is visit the location that you're going to stream, right? That sounds very, very obvious, but as we had this morning, the guy that was streaming for Streaming Media hadn't come here the day before, hadn't tested the Ethernet connection, was handed by these wonderful guys that were just here sorting out this laptop and Ethernet connection, said, stick that in your encoder and off you go. Well, what they didn't mention to him is that you needed a password on that Ethernet connection in order to get to the internet. So they screwed around for about 2 hours, couldn't understand. They had an IP address, but they just weren't online. And they had one of these splash screens that you had to put a password in. This is a typical problem that happens when you go to do a streaming job, right? You can make a prerequisite document. Hey, I need an Ethernet drop with 10 megabits per second up and down. These are the kind of precautions that you make, but there's nothing like actually going to a location the day before, actually plugging in and testing the network that you get, right? So one other surprise that I always find is that IT guys like to play around with you and may decide to shut certain ports. So what do you do? What do you do when that kind of thing happens? Well, apart from having a Wi-Fi analyzer and a port analyzer, which typically we don't have, you have to think about what your backup plans are, right? And this is why I say that it's so important that you test before you go, because a recent event that I was at, I requested a 5 megabit per second Ethernet connection. I was given the drop. I was scribbled down the IP address by the IT guy. He buggered off, and then for the next 2 hours, I was left, trying to get online. And this was for a job for NBC. Everyone was chomping at the bit. I told them I needed an SDI embedded feed. They gave me that. I plugged that into my encoder. I put in the IP address, pressed go live, nothing, right? can hear some guys laughing behind me. So, you know, now's the part where you start to sweat bullets and you try and understand what's going on. Well, for those that know Teradek, you know, we make a bonded backpack, right? So I had a feeling, and I don't know why, but we were kind of hitting the Akamai cloud, but no data was getting through. And I felt that something was wrong with this Ethernet connection. So my backup plan was to use cellular bonding as my backup to get out of the network. Problem was I had two AT&T modems, and this event that was sponsored by Verizon wasn't allowing me to show that I had the AT&T modems, so I covered them in a bag. Anyhow, I plugged in the two AT&T Verizon modems into my Bond backpack. Let's have a look at this Bond backpack. This is live on the website. Here we go. So this is my bonded backpack that has, let's try and get a couple of pictures out here. Okay. Boom. Okay, so that's the inside of my Bond backpack. So in these little devices called nodes, we put SIM chips. So we'll put a couple of Verizon, a couple of AT&T, and a couple of T-Mobile in. We can put 4 in together, and we can aggregate those bandwidths. They're very typical. You know, it's very similar to a LiveView or TVU or a Degero backpack. We do have one secret weapon. If you come to the stand, you'll see this thing. It's about 8 inches long, and as my Alabama TV station man said to me, "Man, that's a big-ass antenna." That big-ass antenna means that I'm going to get about 3 to 4 times the noise, data-to-noise ratio than I would if I use a USB modem. What that means is when the network goes down, because there's 100,000 people taking pictures, I'm going to reach antennas that are or towers that are much further away, which means I don't need 6 or 8 USB modems inside. So anyhow, I plugged these into my network, and lo and behold, we started streaming. Everything was great. I then plugged an Ethernet connection straight in here with the IT information of the guy that, you know, from NBC had given me that cable. I was using my core account, which is the account that I can see what's going on. This is my core is my management account. So my Bond or my cube sends a feed up to the cloud to a core account that shows me what the stats are of my encoder, right? It shows me, am I dropping bits, right? Am I dropping packets? It shows me what delay is. It shows me what the bit rate is. This is the kind of information that is so important when you're streaming. This is really what differentiates myself with any other encoder out there, because most every other encoder out there, you put a video feed in, you plug in Ethernet, you say a prayer to the God of streaming, you press go live, and if it doesn't get there, you've no idea why not. You've none. Could it be a port? Could it be a cable? You just don't know. With Core, I can actually confirm to my customer, hey man, look, I can see what we're streaming, I can see what we're pushing, I can see what packets we're dropping. I can now make changes. I can increase the bandwidth, I can lower the bandwidth. In real time, I can actually confirm to my customer, yes, video's coming in, right? So I was noticing on the Ethernet connection, because it shows me the bandwidths of my connections here. We're going over an Ethernet connection here, but if I had cellular modems in here, it would tell me what each port is giving me. It showed me out of my Ethernet connection that was meant to be giving me 5 megabits per second, I was hardly getting in anything, and it didn't look like video packets. So I called up the IT guy and I go, listen, I'm streaming great, but I can see that something doesn't look right with what's coming in. So he checked his settings and he says to me, oh, sorry, gave you the wrong gateway. Boom, thank you very much. 3 pounds of sweat and a lot of craziness later, I got the right IP information in here, and I started seeing that I was pushing 500 kilobits out of this network that I was meant to get 5 megabits. Now, we have the ability to assign priority to networks. Obviously, you want to assign what your most reliable network is, which is Ethernet, quite typically, right? I was only getting 500 kilobits. So I phoned up the guy again. I said, I don't get it. I have a prerequisite here for 5 megabits per second. So he looked at his requisition form, and it reported to him, or whoever sent him the document to request 5 megabits per second had actually missed a zero. So it wasn't 5 megabytes per second, it was 500 kilobytes per second. Hence, that's what I got. These are the typical problems that you get when you are looking to start streaming an event and starting to plan what am I going to do when something happens? Because it will happen. And the way that you deal with it is going to be, and the tools that you have are going to be what makes the difference between you doing a successful stream or not a successful stream. So again, if we convert this back to the encoders that we sell or that we provide, why do you use one encoder from another, right? There's so much choice out there. Even from one company, there's so much choice. If you come onto my stand, I'll throw out the product names. There's VidiU, there's VidiU Pro, there's VidiU Go, there's Cube, there's Slice, there's T-Rex, there's Bond, there's Link Pro. All of those products stream. And even people that work with us don't know what the differences between each are because they change. I can run through the differences with you. I like to say it this way. VidiU, it is that product that you stick video in, press go live, and hopefully it goes, hopefully your connection is good and it goes live. I've sold thousands of these. I have one church that bought 3,500 of just that one box. So it does work, and many people are really happy with it. But for me as a professional, I like the back end of what Core gives me, that I can confirm that feeds are coming in. The Bond is obviously our cellular bonding device, which gives you the ability to turn up in any location and turn up in a field and basically start streaming over cellular. Now, a couple of things to note, and I made a couple of notes here. I actually did make a couple of notes because I wanted to mention you should always, and this is obvious, and I was just talking to a guy earlier that I said, what's your backup plan? Do you have any spare gear? When you go out to do a stream, what's your backup plan? Do you take spare cables? Do you take spare power? Do you take all the things that you would used to do before you were streaming? You would take a spare camera even now. If I say to someone, take a spare camera, they look at me like I'm from Mars. But, back in the day, this is what we used to do. We would never turn up at an event with a single point of failure. The same is true for the encoding world. Always have your backup plans. God, I hate this iPhone. All right. Arrive early. I can't stress this enough again. I have been at events like I was for NBC, and if I had not have arrived there early, I wouldn't have had the 3 or 4 hours I needed in order to get myself out of the trouble that had been created for me. One of the other points that I like to emphasize is that you have to be the cool ones. You have to be the ones that everything's all right, no one needs to panic, we will get this guy streaming. And then the 2 bodily functions that you need to take care of, one is drink a lot of water, and 2 is make sure you go to the loo first, right? Last but not least, I would say that the other important thing is at the end of an event to actually analyze that event, document what went well, document what didn't go well, because that will become your Bible in moving forward and allow you to become more confident in dealing with problems as they occur in the future. Because I have to talk about products, what I'm demonstrating here at the show, I'll throw this in here, is our Link Pro, I would say. Hands up those that don't want broadband internet when they get to a location, right? Everyone does. Now, we created a Bond backpack that doesn't take video, it takes agnostic data, which means you can turn up at a location and do I have a picture of it? Scroll down somewhere. There we go. So that has 4 cellular bonded modems on the back end of it. That means I can drop it in the middle of a trade show here and not even have to rely on the network of the facility. That's what I'm running here for streaming media. So I'll run through very quickly what happened with streaming media, streaming to the Facebook earlier. They're on the back side of my stage, and they came to me and said, John, do you have something that we can use for streaming? The box that we're using can't connect to the internet. Well, you know, I had a look at the box that they're using, and the box that they're using can't connect to the internet anyhow. So I gave them a cube, and I Etherneted the cube into my Link Pro that had the back end of the internet using cellular modems. So rather than paying the facility here $1,000 for 500 kilobits for a day, I'm basically bonding 4 cell modems to send it up to the cloud where we have a broadband connection, and that's how we are streaming to their Facebook page. The point is that none of this was planned, and you know, that's why I was late here, because you know, everything takes longer than you think. But they are now streaming. We were able to get a feed out of here, even when they assumed that they couldn't. So they're the kind of tools that we give our customers, and why we are probably the largest provider of encoding devices. I don't know, at least in the US. I mean, they're in the tens of thousands. And I have people coming up to me that turned up on the stage and says to me, man, I got a cube from 2013 that's never been turned off, and it's still just pumping out. And I'm like, well, let me upgrade it for you. No, it just works. Don't touch it. You know, that's the kind of world that we're in. How much time do I have?
John, you got 2 minutes. You want to take some questions?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. Who's got a real-life problem that he can solve in 2 minutes?
Yeah.
You have anybody? Anybody? I guess you answered it all. Oh, we got one.
Which one of your solutions I've never done this before. Which one of your solutions will do Ethernet and bonded cellular?
The bond?
Yeah, if you want bonded cellular for backup.
It will do both.
What?
It will do both. The Bond backpack has an Ethernet, Wi-Fi, and cellular connection. And it will bond all 3 of those connections together. And it will give priority over one network over another. I.e., I want to make Ethernet my priority and cellular my least. Right? So yes.
Anybody else? Okay, round of applause for John from Teradek.